Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tuesday evening. It is 9 o'clock. Time for a live stream. But first, as always, a little music. Enjoy. Good evening, Budgie.
We are all the heirs to Scotland, as a nation proud we stand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let a flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. To the world we bid a welcome in 1,000 different ways. We will toast to long lost friendships as we build our better days. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. We are all the heroes of Scotland. We're a nation hand in hand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum.
Good evening, folks. I hope you're all doing well. The weather seems to have broken here a few hours back. Oh, there's Special K. Good evening, Special K. So I hope the weather isn't going for good, but it certainly has broken for the moment. So I hope you all had a good weekend. I got some time outside. I know some of you were busy over the weekend, like Toffee there, doing live streams. But I'm sure he still managed to get outside at some point. a few weeks from now. Not sure whether it'll be a Tuesday or a Friday. I'll be having my sister on the live stream. Need to try and get that audience as large as we can get it. Oh, good. You got my email. So yes, we've been talking about getting her on stream for long enough, but she's always busy, my sister. She's always doing stuff. Well, she's got a lot of things to say, Toffee, and from my point of view, the things that she is involved in are all community things. And I want all of you to be aware of what goes on in this community so that you can compare that to what's happening in your own community, if anything at all. Good evening, Will. And that's why the more people that we can get on, the better. Well, because I am assured from what Alison says that an awful lot of things go on in this Inverclyde that doesn't seem to be happening anywhere else. And as far as I'm concerned, that just isn't good enough. Because of all the various people that are getting help here and being encouraged to be involved in one thing or another, it should be the same across the nation. I don't mean just Scotland when I say this. As far as social services, shall we call it, and voluntary work is concerned, it should be the same from John O'Groats to Land's End. So it's important that as many people know about what's happening here. But she's involved in working with young men coming out of prison, trying to keep them out of prison. She's involved in befriending, trying to make sure that people who would like a companion can have a companion that's suitable. That's only two things. There's much more to it than that, of course. Jojo, good evening. So all of this, it's important to know about. But she's got the detail, and she know how all of this is linked together, which I don't have that kind of knowledge. She has it. So anyway, this is just a preamble. I'll mention it a few times before I get a date. We don't even have a date yet because she's going on holiday soon. But it'll be after the holiday, and I've tried to get BBC back to join the stream. I'd like her to come on along with Alison after Alison's been on herself. I hope that's clear. So Alison would come on, and then at some short time later, these two ladies could come on together and create a very interesting live stream, especially after BBC has heard what Alison's got to say, because she comes from a different area, and that might be very, very interesting to get these two together. I know both of them are looking forward to the idea of this. Good evening, Woodlander. Because there may be things going on in PBC's neck of the woods that isn't happening here. And we need to know these things. So that's something to look forward to. But it's got to come in that order. As I say, I've spoken to each of these ladies separately, and they agree. So it's a question of timing. What else is there? Last week we had a very interesting conversation about the world of spirit. I'd like to bring up the subject of abortion. I remember quite well, as a very young man, seeing a clip from the House of Commons as a very young David Steele took to his feet to introduce a bill that would make legal abortion in this country. And I remember very clearly, good evening, William. I remember very clearly thinking it was a good idea. But of course, I was very, very young. And rather naive. Not only in the ways of the world, but politically. Well, if I say he was a liberal, Streaky, that gives you sort of a clue. Coming under the wing of Jeremy Thorpe. Well, at the time, it seemed like a good idea to me. But of course, as I say, I was very young. I don't even think I was 18 when this came into law. But I remember seeing a clip of it on the news. It was a big, big issue of the day, of course. Now, why am I bringing it up now? Well, I'm bringing it up now because so much has changed. And that particular law has stood unchanged since it came in. Now, my thinking at the time as a immature young man was it was better for women if they were going to have this done, to have it done by people who knew exactly what they were doing in clean surroundings, safe surroundings, etc. What I was not aware of was a political tendency everywhere. Fix my chair here. To take a law and then stretch it until it becomes unrecognizable to where it started. And that's what happened over the period of time. Started off with very narrow limitations. Toffee. Saw a clip the other day where a woman getting a C-section and the baby grabs the surgeon's hand. It was premature, and at the time, at the same term, they are now allowed to abort the baby in certain US states. But you have to remember, when this was first brought in Britain, as far as controversy, start again. As far as sexual matters are concerned, contraception in form of the pill hadn't yet arrived. And that, nor had any of the other things. I think probably the cat was probably around. Rory's saying, I went out with a girl who had an abortion aged 50. She was so ashamed that she mentioned it to me before our first date. Good evening, Robert. Now, whether this bill got passed or not, all hung around the argument at the time on when life began. That's what it all hung on. Good evening, Aglo. But as I say, much has changed in all this time that's passed. There are many more forms of contraception than there ever used to be. There are many more varieties of birth pills. But the one birth pill that never arrived, that was promised, and that was a birth pill for men, that never happened. And it was talked about as being just down the road, just a few years away, but it came to nothing. But I'm not bringing this subject up to talk about that. But for me, the most important development in this whole discussion about birth control and babies and conception. Very good, Toby. Is that science is so much better at identifying exactly the moment of life. And it is almost instantaneous. Very good, George. we used to use a Dutch cap, says Jojo, but it kept falling off my head. Very good. So my point is, and it's a substantial policy in the party, this whole business about abortion. That's why I'm talking to you about it. Whether you're a party member or a supporter, or still in between those two. If we were in power, the state and the national health would still allow abortions to take place. However, no abortion can take place unless the relevant paperwork has been filled in. And by that, I mean this would be new paperwork that does not exist at the moment, whereby the mother and the father both have to agree to the abortion to take place. So there would be a form, the man and the woman with both have to fill it in and sign it, have it witnessed, so that a woman by herself cannot have a legal abortion in the country. So that woman could no longer cut the man out of huge decisions, and that doesn't come any greater than a decision to terminate a life. So he would be involved in this decision. That's the first thing. So the mum and dad would have to, as I say, complete the paperwork. And if they still wanted to go ahead, they would have to pay the full cost of the medical procedure regardless of the cost of that procedure. Now, I don't know how much an abortion would cost, but just for the sake of the discussion tonight, let's say it was £6,000. Well, that £6,000 would have to be paid before the abortion took place. Yes, Anglo-Saxon. He claims to be a Roman Catholic, but he cannot possibly be a practicing Roman Catholic, as he fully supports the idea of abortions. Well, that would be interesting to hear that, Toffee. So that's the first thing. The woman can't be allowed to make this decision by herself. And if the mum and dad want to go ahead, they would have to pay the full cost of it. Otherwise, it won't go ahead. Well, of course, celibacy is always an option. Rory is saying, I'm sure that you remember Screaming Lord Such. Yes, I do. Of the monster raving loony party. That was the days long ago, folks. Some of you may be a bit young to remember this. But there was a time in this country when the cost of standing for a national election was reasonable enough that you got people who would stand for a laugh and for a joke and add a bit of colour to the whole business of it. And this guy was one of them, Screaming Lord Such, wore a top hat and bizarre clothes. But he wasn't meant to be a serious political figure. This is who Rory's referencing. His brother, Dame Anthony Such was a monk at Downside Abbey. And that's the point that Rory's making. Celibacy is always an option. Of course it is. I've never heard of that one, Toffee. That's a new one on me. Robert said, would rather pay 6,000 to the mother on birth than it's the state's baby. Then it's the state's baby. Unless she wants to keep it. Well, you see, I don't think, in fact, I would ferociously argue that children need to be brought up with a mum and a dad. I speak from experience here. Now, I had a good childhood. Don't get the wrong idea, but there was a gap, and all children who are missing a parent will talk about it, will know it's there. Well, I agree with what Robert's saying. Encourage the life, not the killing. I think our policy is a good policy because it forces the man and the woman to take charge, to be responsible. Rather than what happens now and what has happened all these years, where far too many women make that decision all on their own, quite often without the man ever knowing about it. Good evening, Johnny Rowan. We could pay the childless to take them on, says Robert. We already do that, Robert, do we not? Through adoption. Well, if what you're suggesting is if we take this, and I'm just using the number 6,000, if we take that 6,000 that the couple are paying to kill a baby, then that 6,000 could be passed on to a couple who are adopting a baby. Missed a bit somebody to endorse this rule. And of course, there's a time limit on these things as well. Aglo, I see the ICC have issued an application for the international arrest warrant for Netanyahu. Can't see it happening myself. And just interesting though. Well, I'm with you on that one, Aglo. I can't see it coming to anything. No, I don't see that coming too much. If you agree with me, my thoughts are this, for what they're worth. The whole business of Nuremberg was simply revenge. That's what all that was about, was simple Jewish revenge. Because nothing much has happened since then. And yet, we only have to stop and think for a moment about all the murder and mayhem and wars since 1945. That's our answer to everything, Streaky. Everything's anti-Semitic. It has no power, those words. They have shown themselves to the world for what they are. And they'll never be able to go back on that. Because unlike the past, and you all know this, everybody's got a mobile phone. Everybody's got images. They can't keep the images contained. They can't deny it. So that victim that they like to play and have played for the last almost 2,000 years is gone. It's not coming back. And that's what they don't like. Well, Rory, the way it's turning out and the way it has been turning out for long enough, it's nothing. It's just a useless, symbolic bureaucracy that does nothing. As I say, it was a way to make it look like some kind of justice or legal system had come into being because of the Second World War, when in fact nothing had happened except it was Jewish revenge. I don't know how many of you know this. I'll tell you a fact, and if you don't believe me, you can check it out for yourself. As you know, every serviceman gets a rule book, or a handbook if you prefer, with all the do's and don'ts. It doesn't matter whether you're a private or a general, you get one of these booklets. Well, by the time we got to 1943, and it was quite obvious to everyone outside of Hitler's headquarters that the Germans had already lost the war, and the American lobby was hungry for revenge, and they started working on the legal system. All the service personnel in all the Allied armies, all their rules were changed so that the German soldiers, especially the lower ranks, could not use as a defense. I was following orders. The whole rule book for all the armies, all the Allied armies, were changed to take that out because that was in there. That was taken out and the wording was changed. That started happening about 1943 or thereabouts. probably round about Stalingrad time. Because it was getting set up, this Nuremberg, this so-called legal and illegal actions of the Germans, because they were the only ones that were on trial. But they weren't the only ones who had committed, quote, war crimes. And the very last book of the trials, the Nuremberg trials, they're all laid out into books. But the very last one is the written records of all the civil servants in the German government from 1933 onward. Now, what does it say in that book? Well, what it doesn't say that the Chancellor of the country was a villain. It doesn't say that. There is not one single civil servant, from the person who sold stamps in the post office all the way up the tree, and all the civil service had anything bad to say about the German government in general and the hierarchy in particular. And the Allies did a lot to get that to be changed, including blackmail. I don't know, Special K. I don't know if it did. I can tell you this about German women. They were quite happy when the American troops arrived in Berlin. And the reason for that is the price of having sex with a German woman went from 2 cigarettes to 5 cigarettes when the Americans arrived. British troops were not very happy about that. Woodland is correct. That's a long-held tradition in the Roman Catholic Church. Fish, not necessarily with chips, but fish on a Friday was compulsory at one point. Oh, without a doubt, Anglo's asking me about Tony Blair. Is he a war criminal? Of course he is. What with his buddy from the USA. They both are. Well, one of the most famous cases, Streaky is commenting, they were tortured terribly before admitting guilt at the Nuremberg trials. Of course, it's quite correct. And the most famous case of that was the commandant of Auschwitz. It's quite detailed. There's quite detailed information on what that man in particular was subjected to, quite apart from beatings, starvation, and general threats. His wife and children were also subjected to threats if he didn't admit to this confession, if he didn't sign a confession, which was written for him apparently. Written in English, by the way. And he was forced to sign it. Which is quite remarkable considering this man didn't speak any English at all. The only language he ever spoke was German. It's the only language he could speak. And that was testified to by his brother. And others, of course. Now, that was quite normal pattern. It would beat somebody to a pulp, half starve them, etc., etc. At the same time, they would threaten to seriously hurt wives, mothers, fathers of these particular men to get confessions. So how much credence you put on any of this depends on how gullible you are, I think. Now, I've never put a lot of weight on any of it for a long time. And remember also that the Western Allies had no access to these camps except Dachau, because they were in the east and they were occupied by the Soviets, and the Soviets wouldn't let anybody in. Exile Viking is reminding me and us, don't forget the kidnapping of Adolf Eichmann by Mossad in '62 and brought to Israel for trial and death. They only got away with it because they are the eternal victims. Yes, and supported by Big Brother America. They broke all sorts of laws to do that. All sorts of laws. Nobody knew Mossad was in the country to do it. They didn't try to do it legally, go to the government and say, this guy over here is wanted. Go through the legal. The way they're doing, well, no, I take that back. I was going to say the way they're doing with Julian Assange, but they're not. He's completely illegal as well. And if you look at any of these things, folks, dispassionately at all, you can't help but come to the conclusion America, the USA, is the biggest threat the world's ever seen. They just do what they want to any country. It's just nothing stops them. And of course, they've got this poodle now who act in the same manner. They get around the world doing what they want, protected by their big brother. USA. So no, and no one is going to convince me that Adolf Eichmann didn't have a crap beaten out of him. Now, how guilty are these people? I don't know. I don't know. What is a war crime? If we're going to have such a concept as a war crime, then surely it should apply to all wars, regardless of who commits the crime. Surely. Because if you don't do that, I don't think there's much point in having such a concept or holding up such a concept. I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but that's how I've always regarded it. That's how I've always argued it. Black Sunday. I don't remember that. Special K. Bush and Obama. No, I definitely don't know it. Well, that's the other thing. Well, that would be part of it, but just a small part. But nevertheless, I'm sure it was quite useful. But as I say, once I was a bit older, I knew a little bit more about this whole concept of war crime. It seemed very obvious to me straight away that the whole idea was corrupt and it was nothing but an excuse to execute the whole hierarchy of the German government. And it was very convenient also, if you think about it, with all of these folk dead, then there's no one left to dispute what is said went on. Anglo, apparently fish and chips were introduced to England by 4x2 in the 1800s. I can bullshit. We hadn't learned to fry fish. Oh, you call it bullshit? Well, yeah. Seems a bit odd, doesn't it? No, that living on an island with at one time a very healthy fishing industry, that nobody knew how to fry fish. It seems a bit odd. So I take your point, Angelo. I take your point. Well, I had, oddly enough, I had fish today. Sometimes called flounder, often called plaice, flatfish, white, very nice. But the trouble is, living in a town that was once a port for offloading fish, we don't have a fishmonger here anymore, believe it or not. David Clues said that American soldiers were shooting babies in the head, says Jojo. Well, not says Jojo, but says David Clues, whilst in their mother's arms in Vietnam. A lot of bad things went on. You take care, Woodlander. Thanks for being here as always. Always nice to have your company here. And then there was Paperclip. Yeah, of course. Ah, don't forget tobacco as well, Real. Streaky. I love haddock. Oh, you rarely see haddock up here. They have substitutes, but it's not haddock. I would go with Rory here. I prefer haddock fish fingers. Well, haddock and chips, I would say. So what was I saying? Yeah, well, I was talking about this. So I've never had any high regard for any of these so-called international courts. I think they were kept on to cover the true existence of revenge. So I don't think that if they issue a piece of paper, it'll mean very much or it'll do anything. Well, I'm sure you're all well aware that the USA says that if one of these indictments are ever issued against an American, they'll invade the place. I think they're serious when they say that. So no, nothing much will come of it. Anglo, 40,000 dead British civvies during the whole of World War II. 40,000 dead German civvies over 2 nights at Dresden. Yep, dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. Ugh. If you haven't read this book, you should read it. It's pretty gruesome stuff, and it's got some awful photographs. Don't know how well you can see these. Just two of the books. Just two. No, I don't have Slaughterhouse 5 Special K. I don't. I do not have that. Do you know the thing? One of the many things that sickened me about Dresden, they actually deliberately bombed the zoo. Can you believe that? They deliberately bombed the zoo to kill all the animals so they couldn't be used as foods. You're like a librarian in your wee cubbyhole, says Exim. Because he's been here, he's seen this. Well, it's very well described in the book if you haven't read it, Anglo. If you're interested in such a subject and you want to know all the grim details, that's the book to buy. It's only a book on the subject, really. People try to take pot shots at David Irving because he's not a quote qualified historian. In other words, he does not have a degree in history. But what he did, of course, if you don't know, is he went to Germany as a young man to worked in a steel mill. And of course, working there forced him into learning how to speak German. And then he used that to interview survivors in their own language, of course. And from that, I had interviews of the British, I think mainly British airmen. He put that book together. Well, I wasn't aware of that, Rory. Dresden was a very Catholic area. I didn't know that. So was Nagasaki. Strange coincidence. Well, never forget, folks, that Germany was roughly divided into two. One part of Germany was essentially Protestant variations of Protestants, and the other part, the southern and western, was Roman Catholic. That's how it roughly split up. So there you go. But yeah, the thing that the other thing that bothered me when I read the book on Dresden, and I had never heard of this anywhere, that if you were an airman and you refused to go on one of these flights, you were automatically dismissed from the services with a bad report. That's how they forced the men into doing the missions. Yeah, well, that's true. Well, all the major towns and cities in Germany were firebombed over the course of the war. Started in Hamburg, of course. So that's how they kept the men in the planes, through blackmail, fear of a dishonourable discharge. Apparently there was something like 40 to 50,000 men from the various air forces died over the course of the war. It's quite a number of people, if you think about it. Did not see Germany have a state-sanctioned church preference. No, it didn't. The single biggest organisation was, of course, the Roman Catholics. But there was, as I say, half the country was Protestant. Hiya, Duck. Hope you're doing all right, my friend. Well, it's only people like us that would say that, Uncle. And if you hear any of the stories that are all over the internet about the behaviour of the Red Army as it advanced westward, it's absolutely mind-boggling. The horror, the cruelty, unbelievable. There was no quarter given there, you see, on the Eastern Front. But I'm going to change subject. I didn't mean to drift on to history. Here's a short video for you to hopefully enjoy if you have not seen it. It's oldest pub in England.
The Old Fighting Cocks is historically formerly known as the oldest pub in the country. The first brick was laid in 793, but this is actually the oldest inhabited building in Europe, I believe. The first brick was laid here the year the Vikings invaded in Linslade, about an hour and a half's drive up near Leicester. 2,000 years ago, the only bit of civilization in this country was a walled city about 200 yards from behind where you're sitting. And that was Verulamium. They had baths in there, they had the most amazing mosaics, they had running water, they had lavatory systems and all the rest of it. It was like modern day. Anywhere outside those walls, they were still chucking stones at each other. So in terms of history, you think of the cathedral, which is 250 yards that way. That's the oldest place of Christian worship in our country. It was the first. It was never that big at the beginning. Obviously, it's been built over the years and the centuries, but this building was here before that. You can see the ruins of Rome. They ruled the world for 2,000 years, and all of it too, and it's just like rocks now, just ruins. If you don't change, you become like that. And they were like, ruled the world for years, more than anyone else ever.
People don't expect to see a priest in a pub, and I'm often asked if I'm a real priest, and I normally say I'm either a real priest or a very disappointing strippogram, and luckily no one's actually tested that theory. I've been coming to this pub almost as long as Christo's been here. So before I was at St Saviour's, I was up the hill at the cathedral as sub-dean. So there's me at the top of the hill, oldest place of continuous Christian worship in Britain, and Christo's down here in the oldest pub in Britain. And so the two were destined to meet, really. Pubs are essentially about people. You know, whatever the bricks and mortar are, the beer's important, of course it is, but it's a place where people come together and people relax and be themselves.
It's where class and job and opportunity and position doesn't matter. It's a home for anybody. It's a public house. So you come in here, you get a welcome, all right, and you get a smile, and hopefully you get a beer.
And you allow dogs?
Yeah, dogs are more welcome than humans. Don't tell anyone. I've never barred a dog, ever.
Very short. It's closed now, of course. COVID got it. Here's a slightly longer video on the same subject.
Flanked by the church, the rectory, and the people's homes, stands the inn. In its shade and beneath its roof, men of all degrees and of all opinions meet in comradeship and comfort. Walk through any English market town, and you'll find the inn at the center of its life. On market day, the people from the country around meet there to discuss the trend of prices, their children's health, and their home affairs. It's the same in the villages. When the sun warms the earth, they sit outside and watch the world go by. At the English inn today, there is a hospitality that to the host is just as much a sacred charge as it was to the monks and barons in the Middle Ages, who first gave bread and ale to travelers. Often the only sanctuary in out-of-the-way parts, the monasteries had a lodge open to pilgrims and other wayfarers. Later, these lodges became separate establishments and were eventually run as inns, under such signs as the Pilgrim's Inn. One example of monastic origin is the Bull, which gets its name from the papal bull or bill, not the animal. These inns of England have seen history happen in their yards. Pilgrims and warriors have trodden their stairways. Here, medieval knights refreshed themselves on their journeys to the Crusades to fight under the banner of St. George. The inns have preserved much of England's architecture. The early inn has preserved some of the finest carvings and treasures. Like the church, it was a sanctuary. Hence, most of these carvings have a religious meaning. Side by side with the monastic inns grew the royal inns, which were used by the king's servants when traveling in the Middle Ages. A house in each village was selected for their accommodation. These too in time became commercial inns under such ancient signs as the Crown. Later, the inn yard was used by the postboy as a link between villages and hamlets. The mails, in turn, were carried by stagecoach further afield, and today, much of our civilization can be traced back to these earlier forms of communication which centered round the inn. As the inns grew more important, their yards grew larger, and galleries were added. These formed a convenient theatre for strolling players, who often used the inn for refreshment after their performance. By the beginning of the 19th century, coach travel had become more popular, and the tavern was used as a coaching station. There, luggage was assembled, and passengers would be taken aboard prior to the long drive across the English countryside. Mail coaches built for speed used the inns as halts, where fresh teams of horses were changed in a matter of seconds. Today, beneath the sign of the old coach and horses, you'll find bicycles. While on the road, cars pass old toll gates, where once fees were collected for the upkeep of the main road. When the railway brought speed to industrial England, it also brought the new railway taverns. You'll also find the inn on the banks of the English waterways, our oldest transport routes. The cargoes which float past have changed with the centuries. Sail has given way to steam and the petrol motor. The inn signs themselves reflect a great variety of topical humor, interests, sports, and history. The load of mischief, a dig at the nagging wife. The volunteer, from the days when warfare was more casual. The White Hart, crest of King Richard II. England's St. George fighting the dragon. And England's St. George refreshing himself afterwards. The Six Bells with its two meanings. The row barge to remind us of more leisurely days, and the cross-handed highwaymen of when our roads weren't so safe. The Fighting Cocks, memories of an old English sport. And the airmen, to bring our inn signs right up to date. Travel along the English road today, and you'll find the modern inn, there to refresh all travelers according to their means. Its appearance and amenities differ widely from the village tavern, but its roots are the same. It merely reflects the temper and taste of a new and swifter age. The inn parlor today is used by the local people for communal purposes of a different kind. Air raid wardens use it as their meeting place to discuss how to tackle a new type of incendiary bomb. In the back room of another inn, members of the local fire service are learning how to use some new equipment. And all over the country, people come once a week to their local tavern to pay their small contribution into the war savings group. The Home Guard have used the inn as a meeting place ever since they were a small, eager body of men hastily organized for home defense. Today, well armed and trained, the inn is still their meeting place. The inn has changed very little in appearance and hardly at all in its amenities. The contents of its cellar are not so expensive, but quite adequate for this less indulgent age. Oliver Goldsmith wrote of the inn that it was a place where grey-beard mirth from smiling toil retired, where village statesmen talked with looks profound, and news much older than their ale went round. Rich and poor, young and old, the English inn has housed them all and greets them still. For hospitality, tolerance, and companionship are ageless. And at the inn, each of them is merely a new arrival at a feast that never ends.
So there you go, folks. It's a completely different world when you see those films, isn't it? It's just brilliant. I used to love seeing that stuff any time I went down to England. Not that I ever did that very often. I liked English beer as well, bitter. Enjoyed that. No expert on beer, so there is that. I'm not an expert. But English pubs have always had a different feel to them. Streaky. South East England has beautiful villages. Yeah. Excellent. Jolly, spiffy old chap. Well, I'm just being honest. I just thought English pubs were good. Got to remember what the Scottish pubs were like when I first encountered an English pub. Very different. Oh, you wear a goatee, Toffee. Interesting. So yeah, English pubs, Scottish pubs, very different. The Golden Lion, the Red Lion. Oh, there's a lot of them, I've noticed. The Saracen's Head, or as you would say, the Saracen's Head, and the Marquis of Granby. I think somebody's trying to wade you up, Toffee. I'm usually clean shaven, says Toffee, but I had a goatee the other day on a stream, and folks said it was a moustache. So obviously you had the camera on then, Toffee. Interesting. Oh, there's a compliment for you. Will said you. Errol Flynn. There you go. Errol Flynn. There was a man. You prefer Oswald Mosley, Toffee? Yeah. A bit of Tom Hardy about her, Toffee, is that? Really? Oh, Tom Hardy. Errol Brown, I don't know that person. Hot Chocolate, I don't really know the group. Rory, I've heard the Celtic and Rangers fans won't drink in the same pubs in Scotland. Is that still true? Does the sun come up in the east? Of course it's still true. Oh yeah, there are pubs specially dedicated to these two football teams. You daren't go in unless you belong to that particular group of supporters. So yeah, it's still true. Fortunately, it has seen some decline over the years, as all these sectarian groups have. Still there, of course, but it's nothing today as it was when I was growing up. My God, it was awful. And it is also true, of course, that most of the people who go in for all that sectarianism have no idea what they're talking about. That is definitely true. I think I could safely tell you it's one of the many things that put me off from trying to know anything about football, because I wanted to avoid that. I always thought it was stupid. Stricky, I watched just a boys' game. Yeah. Again last week, the excellent BBC play. The pubs were rough as F. You know, of course, that was shot in Greenock. It's filmed down here in Greenock. Just a boys' game. The author used to live not too far from here. He went up to Glasgow very quickly after his breakthrough. Anglo saying the invaders have it all wrong. We're up for some sectarianism on these isles. Well, that's for sure. Exile said, you should have heard how my granny described a game of football. Stupid, effeminate men running around in underpants. Yeah, one of the thing you have to be very careful. I'm addressing Streaky particularly here. One of the things you have to be very careful about, Streaky, is the power of edit. There's a scene in it's only a boys' game, just a boys' game rather, when Jake McQuillan and his pals open these swing doors and they walk into what looks like a snooker place. It's actually a pub. Well, it used to be a pub up at Caplo with 2 snooker tables. By the way it's shot, it looks like a bigger place. And there's a bit of a fight starts up. And they get stumbled down onto the street. But when it comes out onto the street, it's a different location. That's the power of the edit. It's very noticeable to somebody like myself who knows the area reasonably well. And you would need to know the area reasonably well to realise that this is taking place over a number of different locations in the town. I did a few. Same guy. Great play though, says Streaky. The grandfather was a miserable old ass. But that's really the centre of the drama is between Jake McQuillan and the grandfather, although he's not in it really. because obviously the grandfather was a hard man when he was young. And Jake's trying to be that same person. It's a powerful piece. I'll say that. Well acted, I thought. And some of the things that happen in life, like the chap who's so drunk that he falls off the the pier and gets crushed between the pier and the boat. So he said, I laughed when the grandfather at the end says, I'd have taken years. That's what I say, it's all about this imagined rivalry. And that's all it is to it. It's only imagined in Jake's mind, trying to live up to his grandfather's reputation. Dancer, that's the guy I was trying to remember. Thanks, Robert. Yeah, Dancer falls off the pier. Oh, that happened down here. Not that I knew any of the people personally, because I didn't. But it did happen. Yeah, there is that suggestion, Budgie. It's a nice touch. I don't know how much of it is based on the author's family. I never knew him personally, although he lived in Inverkip Street, which is, as I say, it's just down the road there. But he'll be a good age now if he's still alive. So there we go. There we go, and here we are. And I'll be winding up shortly. Streaky, would you remind me of who the author was? If you can remember it. Remember the man? Thank you. Wouldn't it occur to me to look that up? Because he wrote a few. Not just that, of course. Aye. So I take it you watched it on YouTube, so it must be available still. No, I did not. Peter McDougall. Thank you, Streaky. No, I didn't know. Johnny. Johnny Rotten, I take it you mean. Well, I must make a note on that one. Never heard that person speak. Good for him. Peter McDougall, that's the guy. Peter McDougall from Inverkip Street. Johnny Rotten, right. Well, I need to make a note of that. American? Really? Good grief. I wasn't aware, Doc, that she was an American. Should be very interesting. Yeah, Peter McDougall. That'll be good. That'll be very good. No, you're not being tased. I didn't realise you were an American. Oh. Well, I look forward to that. Speaking with our centre, that should be very interesting. Good for you. Frankie Miller, that's who played Jake McQuillan, yeah. I wasn't aware he was still musically active, Streaky. Good for him. He's got to be in my age group, is he not? We've got Eki as well. Eki's all right. "40 days, so he's actually younger than I am by 3 years. Oh, there you go now. There you go. A good talker, is she, Robert? Well, after you're spoken to, said some, Jody, perhaps you'll honour me by having a live stream on this channel. That'd be nice. I mean, you are still living in America, I assume. As is our Eke. He lives in LA. I've been in LA. Well, that'd be nice, but obviously that would be after you've spoken to censor. Get all you ladies together. Joni, my sister, Alison, and BBC. 3 of you. That would be something. Oh, that would be fantastic, Joni. That would be absolutely fantastic, I think. I really do. Budgie is telling us Frankie Miller had a severe brain problem, left him almost a vegetable. I don't think I heard anything about that, but he made quite a reasonable recovery. That's good. It's good to know. Good evening, Ludwig. Anyway, I'm going to bring in the outro music. Robert's suggesting I get Linda and Dawn on if you can arrange a time that's reasonable for all. Well, I don't know if I can get Dawn on here, Robert, because the last time Dawn tried to get on the chat, she failed. And there wasn't any explanation as to why she couldn't manage to get back into the chat. She had been in the chat, for long enough, and then suddenly she couldn't get on. So I don't know about that. It won't be like that, Streaky. Behave yourself. So I don't know what happened to Dawn. I couldn't figure out the answer to why she was unable to join the chat. And then there's the time problem, of course. Yeah, it was quite a problem for ages, and I did my best to resolve it, but couldn't. So I have no idea what happened. Well, that's what my mother used to say, Drill. Never should have let them vote. Ah, there's a good put down there. Gossip is for the insecure. That's right. I think it's a question of timing, to be honest with you. I think that's all it is. Question of timing. Anyway, I look forward to hearing Johnny Ratton and then at some later point we'll invite her onto this channel. So, all being well, God willing, I shall return on Friday at 9 o'clock. I want to thank all of you for being here. It's always good to see you here. Let's hope the weather picks up. It isn't going for good. So, Linda, all ready to go there. That's what I like to hear. So, folks, as I like to say, adios, au revoir, cheerio, and until Friday, 9 o'clock, bye for now. Take care, and thanks again for being here. I'll speak to you all soon.
Silently the snow falls, paints a winter scene, swiftly spreads the dark rim, hides the fading autumn green. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, conjure friendships dear to me. Lightly now the breeze flows, disturbing more than just the leaves. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow. Patiently the love grows, lifts the weary heart. Gently now she holds me, melts two worlds once apart. Moonbeams brush the dark wood, usher dreams of you and me. Softly then the breeze blows, disturbing more than just the trees.
All together now,
But love's much more
so much more
than we can know.
that we can never possibly,
We are one small glow
but an important glow.
in the eternal flow. Melodies of long ago, songs of innocence, harmonies to soothe the soul. Past the consequence, moonbeams brush the dark wood, awakening joys of you and me. Silently the snow falls, bringing winter symphony.
All together now,
But we're much more
so much more
than we can know.
that we can never possibly know,
We are one small glow
but an important glow
in the eternal flow. But life's much more than we can know. We are one small glow in the eternal flow.
So take care, everyone. I'll speak to you all again, hopefully, on Friday. And in the meantime, bye for now.